say, I won't take 30 seconds, to just say choice should be about the consumer, not the provider. To say that they can send their kids to any public school that they want to reminds me of Henry Ford's famous statement, the American people can drive any color car they want as long as they want black. To say that you can send your kids to any public school you want to, for some parents, they don't want to send their kids to public school, whether it be for religious reasons or otherwise. And so to say that they can have choice, but their choice is limited to what the provider says, I don't think that's appropriate.
And the next question is for Dave Considine. It'll actually be asked to both candidates, but for you first. Are there any local or state services that you would like to see privatized in order to make cuts or reallocate available funds elsewhere?
That's a good question. And my answer is no. I have yet to see where privatizing something saves the state money, to be really honest. And if it does, it saves the state money by lowering the wages the state pays to its employees, who live in our communities and who pay taxes in our communities and who make our communities run. And it's to have those private people do that job and not supply the benefits that the state supplies that I think everyone deserves. I was talking to a group of nurses at St. Clair Meadows yesterday. And I was talking to them because they asked me in because there's a severe shortage of certified nursing assistants. And they said, you know, we didn't used to have a problem with this. We used a state test for certified nursing assistants, and we could get people to pass that test, and things went really well. And we had really qualified workers. And I said, what's changed? And they said, well, for the last 6 years, we privatized the testing. And now, half of our students can't pass it. And these are their words. Those private companies make money when somebody fails the test because they got to take the test again. And they have to wait 30 days to do it. I think we need to think about that kind of thing. You know, I'm not a person who thinks government needs to be huge. But I think government needs to take care of people. And many times, the government is the most effective and efficient means of doing that.
To make sure I understood it correctly.
Absolutely. Are there any local or state services you would like to see privatized in order to make cuts or reallocate available funds elsewhere?
Well, as far as the privatization of services, you know, I'm a conservative. As a conservative, I don't just want small government, I want limited government. You know, Dave and I have a fundamental difference of opinion on this. Doesn't mean he's a bad guy, doesn't mean I'm a bad guy, so I don't think so. It just means we have a difference of opinion. And the difference of opinion is this. Dave says he's not for huge government, but he wants government to take care of everybody. That's kind of a contrasting statement because there's no way for government to take care of everybody without it being huge. As far as privatizing things, you know, the things the government does now, if you were to ask me in a perfect world, do I think government should be doing everything it's doing? No, I don't. I think government does way more than it's supposed to. But in the real world in which we live, I also know that people have come to depend on those things, and frankly, it's not just my opinion that matters, it's the opinions of everybody. That's what I was talking about at the beginning when I said we need to look at not just the ideology of each candidate, but we need to look at the ability to understand the needs and to understand the desire of the entire district and therefore to represent the entire district. You know, I could easily go to Madison and say everything I wanted to say and represent the conservative part of Sauk County and Columbia County and Dane County. Dave could easily go to Madison and say everything he wanted to say and represent the progressive side. But the fact is, neither of us is supposed to do that when we get there. We're supposed to represent all the people. And so instead of arguing back and forth over whether we should privatize or whether government's too big or too small, I think what has to be done is we have to look at every single issue before the legislature. We have to ask ourselves first, is this the place of government? Is government fixed to this the best answer? If it is, what is the way to do it in the most fiscally conscious way? And what is the way to do it so as to bring the least amount of intrusion into the lives of people? I think once you do that, you'll find the difference between just privatizing and public service, and you'll find that the difference is representing all the people, representing all the district, representing all the viewpoints to the best of your ability. When you're doing that, you're looking for solutions. You're not looking for credit or blame or ideology or any of that.
And the following questions were provided by members of the Baraboo Area Chamber of Commerce. And this question's for, to start with David Moore. And the question is, what can state legislators do to help private businesses provide affordable health insurance for their employees?
Well, this kind of goes back to that first question about addressing the health insurance needs of the district. As I said before, for many people, the paradigm is, looking to your employer, and if your employer doesn't provide it, there's simply nothing else you can do other than to go with either Badger Care or if you don't qualify for Badger Care, going to the Affordable Care Act, assuming that it's still around in a year. I very much disagree with Representative Considine's assessment of the Affordable Care Act, pointing to the subsidies and saying that your premiums really aren't going up. Folks, we need to get out of this idea that there's any such thing as government money or free money. Money's expensive, it's not free. Government doesn't have any money, it's yours, you provided it, you produced it. Government takes it, and some things it takes it for, that's good. But some things it takes it for, that's not good. Affordable Care Act, I think, is really proven to be not very affordable. It hasn't provided a whole lot of care. I'm sure there are some that you could look at who said, yes, it's helped me. Great. Anecdotally, I'm thrilled that someone who didn't have health insurance has health insurance. But if, again, you're not looking at one person, you have to look at the entire population. So as far as what government can do legislatively to help private business, I think number one is you have to produce an environment wherein private business realizes that it's to their benefit to provide health insurance benefits for their employees. I was just reading an article recently about Walmart, and Walmart is kind of the big box target for most people for things like minimum wage and employee benefits, and how Walmart is changing their approach, how Walmart has begun to pay more and is looking at providing benefits because they realize that it's responsible to do, but it's also fiscally prudent for them as a company. They're able to keep their employees longer, they're able to get a better product from their employee. And so I think providing an environment whereby companies can flourish, providing an environment where companies can even profit. I don't think profit is a bad thing. It's a good thing for companies. It's how they hire people. So the idea of helping private companies do private insurance, I would say the best thing the government can do is just make sure that there's an environment where companies can do that.
I'm glad David mentioned the Affordable Care Act. And I'm glad he brought it up because if there's a problem with the Affordable Care Act, and I agree there are some problems that need to be fixed, the main one is leaving health insurance companies in control. I have a fundamental frustration with how little we respect professionals in their field, in this state and in the nation. Your health care is not controlled by your doctor and your nurse or your physician assistant or your nurse practitioner. Your health care is controlled by an insurance company that decides whether or not you get that care and how much care you get. And the same thing happens, in my opinion, that's one of the things wrong with public education. We vilified public school teachers, and all of a sudden, we're not getting the product that we would like to get, and we wonder about that. But it's because we took control out of the public school teachers' hands, and we started manipulating what they had to do. Why do I talk about that so much? I talk about that so much because we're talking about how private businesses can provide affordable health insurance. I think it's pretty clear that the stimulus packages in our state have gone to huge corporations, many of them of which shipped money overseas and or moved their facilities to another state in the United States. And they got government subsidies, supposedly to provide jobs. a much different approach to that. I think we need to stimulate small business, and we need to get at that pretty fast. Entrepreneurs, small business, let's get them growing, and let's get the money where it needs to go, to those who employ 50 or 100 people, not to those who employ 10,000.
Could I have the 30 seconds real quick?
Yes.
Just to clarify, I am not for government stimulating private business with seed money to do insurance or anything like that. When I say providing a climate whereby the business can do so, I think you need to put some incentives in place for companies, tax-wise, where they can use that money to provide better benefits for their employees rather than the state having to do it. I think it'd be less expensive that way. But as far as the government stimulating, no, I'm against that.
This next question is for Dave Considine. Wisconsin residents and small businesses still bear a very heavy overall tax burden relative to those of many states. What steps would you take to decrease the overall tax burden for residents and businesses?
Boy, we're hitting at some of the same kinds of issues, aren't we? So let me flesh that out a little bit. We do need to grow business. Bottom line, we need to grow business. We need to get going. And while the manufacturing sector is important to our state, and for a long time it provided the jobs that people needed, and steady jobs with good benefits, that is not the future of our country. It's not the future of our state. We live in a world economy, and the future of our state is not in heavy manufacturing jobs. The future of our state is in engineering jobs, it's in science and technology jobs, it's in producing ideas and shipping those ideas around and creating computer programming and being the force that instead of bringing in automated feeding systems for our calves from Ireland, I can't believe that Wisconsin doesn't lead in that field, by the way. Or instead of bringing in automated milking systems from France and Germany, we import that somewhere else. You know what? We do make some of the heavy equipment there, but we import the electronics from Germany, most of them. I think there's a problem with that because the growth in our world and the growth in our economy is not going to come from that heavy manufacturing. And as we stimulate those kind of jobs, we will stimulate the production and our economy will grow, and that will solve the problem.
My approach would be different. As far as the alleviating the tax burden, I think for small businesses, one of the ways you would do that is with the repeal of the private property tax, which is a move that's been around for several years now. Most of our neighboring states have already done this. If they haven't already done it, they're phasing it out. It's a relatively small amount of money for the state budget. It represents a little less than 3% of the state revenue tax-wise. But it's a big deal to a small business. And the way it's applied right now is so, in fact, one thing I read about it was use the Swiss cheese analogy because there's so many different things. For example, if you have a youth hockey program, the sticks and the equipment and the pads for the hockey is exempted from that private property tax, but equipment for other youth sports would not be. So bats and balls and gloves for a baseball program would not be exempted. So it's a ridiculously arbitrary application of something like that. For a small business, trying just to navigate taxes as it is tough and could be a real expense. So just eliminating the private property tax, I think that'll help the small business. As far as personal income, I've been a long proponent of the flat tax, also, or the fair tax rather, or the flat tax. I prefer the fair tax myself. And the idea of the fair tax is where you eliminate income tax and you replace it with a sales tax. And before everybody starts throwing tomatoes and watermelons, let me explain. If you have your income and you keep your income, so in other words, when you get paid a certain wage, you get paid all of that wage. First of all, the government's not taking part of your check ahead of time. Rather, when you go and you spend your check, then a part of your check is taken there. And people have said, well, that's going to raise sales tax, it's going to eliminate consuming and so forth. You know, you're talking about realistically probably 12 to 13% sales tax, a worst case scenario 15%. So as opposed to a 7% sales tax, that means if you're buying something that's $10 Instead of paying 70 cents tax, you're gonna pay $1.50 tax. It could be $11.50. Not a huge amount of money. But the difference is, you, the consumer, are making the decision of how much you get taxed based on how much you buy. So this is how you're gonna alleviate income tax and real personal property tax.
Can I have 30 seconds?
Yes.
I love the idea of repealing the personal property tax. I think that's great. The problem is, we can't do it without holding our communities harmless. There's no way the state government should take any more control or any more money out of our local communities' pockets. $500,000 a year, straight off the top, is gone for Baraboo. I can't support that unless we can find a way to hold them harmless on a state level. And we've already been talking about how that isn't gonna work.
That's 30 seconds.